I am so excited for this episode because it's not only an episode of a subject that is so near and dear to my heart and my mind, but it's also near and dear to my guest's heart and mind. In fact, you're going to feel her passion, and I'm so excited for you to meet her. But we are talking today about the brain on music. And honestly, if you don't know a lot about music or haven't thought a lot about music, it's probably one of the most powerful tools that we have in our arsenal of things for not only our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, but just our general well-being. It's probably one of the most powerful influencers that are out there. And today we're going to talk about some of the stories from our guest. And today we have Kasia Haroldsen, and you're going to see the experiences that she's had in her life and how music has shaped her. And hello. You are listening to No Brainers Empowering Possibility Show. These are dialogues of encouragement with fresh perspectives, invitations to ahas, a little bit of science, a dash of behavioral psychology, and some usable and easy skills to try now, and a whole lot of creativity. So if leveling up is on your radar, my friend, you are at the right show. I'm your host, Roseanne Marsh. I'm the author of the teen and parent empowerment curriculum called Level Up, Empowering Possibility. And you are listening to episode number 65, Your Brain on Music. Okay, so I'm so excited to introduce you to Kasia Haroldsen. I met Kasia probably, I want to say 6 months ago, and in probably one of the most beautiful places of the world that has some delightful music, I will say. And that was in Hawaii on a retreat. And I ended up with her again at a retreat. So when you meet people constantly and they are in your life, you know that you're being gifted to get to know some of their passions. And this is a woman that I'd say has probably more passion for music than anyone I know. So Kasia, welcome to the show, and thank you for being willing to kind of give us some of the experiences that you've had with music. And I will say that she comes with a lot of expertise, because this isn't someone who just likes music. This is someone who is out in the world composing and influencing through music and inviting people to become creators. And as you know, I feel like we're all creators. So if there's another way for us to become a creator, we want to pay attention. So Kasia, today, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Roseanne, for having me here. It's been a pleasure and an honor to share some of my experiences with music. Yes, music is a topic that I will be talking and sharing so much because I truly appreciate the gift from heaven, gift of music, which surrounds us everywhere. In my opinion, I hear the music in trees, the birds, the rain. There's so much around us that we are connected with music rhythmically. Our first rhythm that we feel, which I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts, is our heartbeat. And then when we do things around our house, even brushing your teeth is a rhythmical. Doing things, I don't know, cleaning, vacuuming, it's a rhythm. So there's a connection with rhythm.
Absolutely. And that's why we are so attracted to music, because the heartbeat is a beat. And so we're attracted to anything that has that rhythm or that beat. And there's advertisers, people out there that know that and entice us in through that. So there are a lot of things that we can learn by learning the strategies of those who know a lot about the psychology of our brain, even. I want the listeners to know a little bit about you. You have a beautiful, rich background that really led you into music, right?
Yes, I am originally from Poland, and my dad actually is from Belarus, and his musical original way of playing came from that area. Both actually from my parents. My mother was playing a mandolin, and my dad was playing an instrument that I didn't even know there was an instrument like that, but he would pick a leaf from a lilac tree or a birch from a tree, and he would whistle, but so in tune. You will give him any music to play, he would play it for you. He never learned how to read music, like notation. He never went to any school, but he played by ear. So during time of communism and the time that he was in Belarus and coming to Poland, they used music a lot. They would play accordions. They would just, like my dad would whistle or singing, harmonizing music. So if you know any people from that area and the period of time like that, I know 50s, 40s, they would play and sing a lot. Even during World War II, they would go and march and they would be singing. And so that's my dad's kind of background with music. And my mother, she grew up in Warsaw area, and the same, never learned how to play from music books or notations. She would just play by ear. She loved music. And so when they got married, that was like this match. They played together, they sang together. And so that's what I remember growing up in my home, music constantly. That's what really inspired me, dancing to the music, singing with them. And so later when I was growing up, my mother, because she didn't know how to read music, how to read the notation, she wanted us to have education. So she sent us to music schools. And that's when I started having, when I was 6 years old, I had my first lesson, piano lesson. And I remember the teacher asked me, and with my mother, they were asking in a question, if there will be no room for a piano class, what other instrument I would like to play. And I said, I don't know, I just want to play piano. But they put me in a class with the violin, and it was interesting experience to learn violin, because violin and the piano are not the same way of learning instrument. In playing violin, you have to have a good ear, or at least enough good that you can recognize the sound and place the fingers in the right position. And then also you have a coordination of two hands that are kind of doing two different things. But the piano was very simple. You just have a black and white keys and you remember the pattern, how you place your fingers. So it was a different experience to learn violin.
So what did you do with your music in Poland?
Okay. So I played violin through pretty much all my time until I moved to Warsaw, which is, I was 15 when I moved to Warsaw. Before that, just like a couple years before that, I picked a guitar and I started learning how to play the guitar. And that was actually a time when I started to be more interested in creativity, writing music, like not even writing notes yet, but just coming up with a melody line. And it would be so just came up to my head, and I will just create some lyrics and I will just play the guitar. And started, actually, I wanted to play the chords of a lullaby that I remember from childhood, but somehow I didn't know how to play those certain chords. So I came up with a different lullaby and it came a totally different song. And so that's how it started. So I was about teenager when I started to create something. And I thought, oh, I really like that. And so when I moved to Warsaw, that was the time when I spent most of my time of creating, because this was a time when I was trying to adjust to life in Warsaw, living with my grandparents, leaving my home, which was so full of energy. And then I lived with my older folks and I had to figure out how to adjust. So music, it was like a healer to me. I would come from school, I would pick up a guitar and I would play the piano and I would just play and feel my emotions, like let it out through music. And so music was just like a huge part of my journey through that period. And then I came on a mission from my church to the States. And while I was serving here in the States, people would ask me about my music because I would play a lot on my mission. And even though I didn't know English that well, people would feel through my music what I wanted to express. So I thought that was like a powerful, I wasn't even aware that music had such an effect. I knew that affects me, but I didn't know that has such an effect people who are not speaking the same language I do, but they felt so strong. And now going back a little bit, just before I left on my mission, I was working with children children with disability. And that is when I saw another power of music.
What did you see in these disabled children?
So I wasn't a teacher. I was a helper to the teacher because they had like a huge, group of children that needed to be managed. And while I was helping the teacher, I would say, "Can I play piano for them?" And this teacher, she would say, "Yes, let's play some music." So I would play all different sort of tunes, like some happy tones and some melodies, and I would watch the reaction of the children. And the children, there were some severe cases, like there were children who had a severe brain damage or very severe cases of autism that like you would not have a connection with them even. And then Down syndrome. And I remember I had this little student, his name was Bartek, and he would grab his little chair and he would come to me and he would show me with his little hands that I need to play the piano. So he was the first one. So just playing for them and seeing the change of their either very aggravated behavior, or sometimes they would be like, you could feel a lot of like this energy going. And I would play very soft music and they will just calm. They will be calm. It was amazing.
Well, and we know that music is the most powerful state changer. If we want to be in a different mood, all we need to do is put on some music that moves us in that emotion that we want to become. And yet you are seeing this in this disabled and even able-bodied children. We all respond to music in a certain way. It has a way of putting us into a state, an emotional place.
That is so true. And you put it that so well, because even like you said, as we pick a music and depends on the music, what kind of brings mood, that particular, either a song or just some kind of piece of music without any lyrics. So I have a playlist of music, and when I do chores, I'm listening to jazz because I just love jazz. When I am going on a drive, I love some upbeat music, but there's a lot of times I just love to listen to classical music or music that kind of brings me to a state of reflection. I just want to ponder and think about it. So if I remember this one story, I would take my children, I homeschooled my children, and we would go for a ride. A lot of times I would just listen to classical station. The reason I did that, because all the other stations would have always commercials. That was the only one station that did not have any commercials. So I would go drive with the children, and sometimes I will just ask them and say, "Okay, now you're listening a piece. I want you to listen and imagine what you hear." Like, and I wouldn't tell them the name of the piece. Like, even if I would know, it would be some kind of symphonic big Tchaikovsky or other composers that are very familiar. I would just ask them to listen to and imagine what they hear. And it was interesting. I would have, the children in the car, and few of them would share, they would listen to the same music but would have a different picture, different imagery. And that was so amazing for their just to feel the music, because we all feel differently. The composer who created years ago had a different image of what she wanted to play or create for us. And then when we are finding ourselves in some position in our life, we hear it differently maybe, and it means something different to us.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you say that, is because in the teen retreats that I've done, one of the things we do is we play an instrumental music, and they listen for 2 minutes, and then they tell us the storyline of what that music was telling them. But it is kind of interesting because a lot of them come up with kind of the same scenario. Like one particular piece that we play, it came out of a film named Hurricane, of all things, but they see running horses. But it's amazing how music will bring up an emotion, or there's a feel of something. And of course, we know the film industry is famous for moving our emotions along the storyline by the overtures or the background music that they put on the movie. So I think that's so brilliant that you did that with your children, because that's one of the things we do in Level Up to teach imagination.
Mhm.
To start stretching yourself by doing interpretation of music.
One of the things that I've done when I was studying about writing music, writing songs, the instructor said, pick a picture of you can Google whatever and find a picture that kind of calls you. So let's say you have a picture of mountains or a river, whatever, and then see what you can come up with by looking at it. It could be just a melody line that kind of brings you to this setting. And it could be lyrics that you want to write a poetry to it and then maybe come up with some melody to it. But I thought that was very interesting because when I started to write music, when I start writing songs, I will just come up with words that would just come. But this was so helpful because then I have my concentration is on that topic and how do I want to express my understanding of that picture and create my own story. And so that is what I love. Like you said earlier, it's really powerful to me to create. When I work with my students, I really emphasize a lot on feeling of a music. I don't want them just to learn how to play. The technical part is important, it's crucial. But when you learn how to play, let's express it right away. What those little notes mean to you? How would you play them? That they have some meaning? Because people naturally will listen music, but the emotion that is put in is much more meaningful than just play. And I've listened students with just playing, and then I heard those who put some effort expressing themselves.
Well, and they're putting their heart and their soul into it.
Mhm.
In fact, we know that when artists record something, there's an intentional vibration that comes out of it, for good or for bad. I know some teenagers say it doesn't really matter what lyrics are. I got the clean play version of it, but the intent is there, the vibration is there, but you're asking them to put their heart into it. And you've even seen performers that perform and their whole heart is in it, their body's in it, and
Mhm.
and you feel that in their music. Our listeners now know that you're a teacher. Tell us what you teach, the different instruments that you teach.
Okay. So that's kind of going back to also the mission, because people would ask me if I will ever come back to the States. And I was like, there's no way, like in my head, because I didn't have that kind of resources in Poland to come to the States and go to college. But they would ask me if I would like to come back and study music someday. So like I said, at that time, I didn't even think about it. But year later, things shifted and it became possible. And I came to United States to Southern Utah University, and I started my education in music. I loved working with my professor, who was actually a retired professor, but he came to teach us composition. That was my favorite class. And this is really what I wanted to do. I wanted to study composition. This professor really inspired me so much to write different pieces. And in fact, he would give us assignment every week to write a new piece, and I would come with a new piece. And then there's one student that he always teased me. It's like, oh my gosh, where did you get this piece now? Because he had such a hard time to write. But I just love coming with notes, and just even if it was just a very tiny short section, and then professor would inspire me to write more. So then I finished my vocal, which that was what I was really studying. On top of composition, I was doing singing. And later, eventually, I was teaching my children music. Started with piano, but I was teaching piano, violin, viola, and the guitar basics, and then some vocals. So when I was teaching my children and they express taking lessons, and I felt like they were ready to have lessons with some other people, because, well, mostly is because children listen to you to a certain point, and then they're like, I don't know if I want to work with my mother, which is totally fine, totally fine. I'm so glad, because they had a different experience with different teachers. But because of that, I decided to perform with them in retirement homes. And I have to tell you, that was the best thing that I was able to do with my children. We would go to those homes, seeing those older folks, the seniors that once upon a time they were young and they were creative, they were doing whatever they were doing in life. And now they were in a stage of their life that some of them would not even connect with you. Just like I remember the children that I was working in preschool. And anytime he would play, the music would lift them. Even those who had like Alzheimer or Parkinson's disease, they would even connect with you. And that was so powerful. I don't understand the, like the brain development at that moment, like scientifically, I wouldn't say it, but I know from just watching the people that music had effect on their brain.
Emotion is one of the highest ways that we imprint or make neural bundles, neural pathways in our brain. So music all our life is making all these connections. It's one of the strongest, largest neural bundles in there. And when we start forgetting all these other things, music can access down into the subconscious like nothing else can. In fact, don't you have experiences with your own mother in Alzheimer's?
Yes, she's got dementia, Alzheimer, and the Parkinson's disease. And when I call her, she is in Poland still. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't even know my name. She doesn't remember anything about me. So sometimes I sing for her a song that she taught me when I was a little girl. And even though it's like you talk to her and she doesn't, seems like she has a connection with you. I sing to her and she says, I know this tone, I know this music. I don't know where from, but I know this music.
Wow.
And so it is amazing. Even if I have this little tiny connection with her through that music, to me is powerful. And the study shows that actually music does help with the Alzheimer, in a sense, like they would put headphones on the people who had Alzheimer, and then they will play pieces from like when they were younger, and people would suddenly like either tap to the rhythm or sing to it and just recognize the tune.
And
So
many of them, they've said that when they hadn't spoken for years, all of a sudden would start speaking because it was able to access, like we said, down the subconscious and kind of awaken some of the things that they had forgotten about or neural pathways that they hadn't been accessing for years and years. I mean, to me, that's miraculous.
in fact, I had this one time, this is a little maybe like a emotional experience, but I had my little girl was about 4 year old, and I was waiting for my older children when we were in a car, and I was playing one of my songs in the player because I was going to sing that song that evening, and so I was trying to kind of practice to it, and my two other younger children are sitting behind, and so I finished, and then I turned back, and then my daughter, she's got tears coming down.
Oh,
Like she's not crying, like like, but it's just tears coming down. Like, what happened? And her response was a surprise to me. She just said, "Mommy, your music is so beautiful." And
oh,
I could not even like in my head, I didn't even know that this particular piece could affect this little child behind. But I do know that music really touches us in different situations or some parts of our brain that it does something. Like in this case, was the emotional part of her brain triggered something that she felt in her little mind, her little heart, and it just felt that those tears coming down there. I mean, there's a video of this little baby that mom is singing to it. She sings to this baby, and the camera is just set up on that baby, and the mother is singing, and this baby is just crying. The tears are coming down. It's like, oh my gosh, I was so
well,
touched to see it.
and you introduced me to that video, and the song was actually a very sad song about separating.
Mhm.
And yet this is a very, very young baby who wouldn't really understand the words, but could understand the content just through the song that the mother was singing. There's really a lot of psychology going on in that.
Yes,
Very, very
yes.
interesting. Very, very interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I think something that you have said is that you had mentioned that when you came to the States and you were playing a lot of music when you were on your service mission, that even though it was in a different language, people could feel the intent of your music. So music really does go across all language borders, doesn't it?
So true. And I love this when I'm so glad that you said that, because I have a podcast as well. And in my podcast, I talked about music. And there's a quote that talks about the music is a universal language. And I believe in that. So, because we might not speak the same language, but if we'll play a music, no matter which country you are in, that music, you will understand the way how I would sing or the way how I would play, people would feel. And that is what was so amazing about that experience. This one man, I remember, every time we would visit him, he would just take his little recorder and he's like, I just want to record your songs because those songs make me calm. I was like, okay, that's all he did.
Well, I know that you have really used your gift. You've composed something that was performed with an orchestra. I've heard you sing. You've written so many songs, and what was impressive is there was a young little gal on our trip with us in the retreat. Her name is Lexi, just adorable, from China, and hasn't really mastered the language yet. But yet, you taught her a little song.
So that song was actually, I used a lot in the preschool with the disabled children. The teacher, actually, she was teaching the children. It's a song for a little doll. It's a lullaby for a doll. But I made up, anytime I would sing for my children, I would put their name to it, like little, baby Luli, no, Luli, baby Luli, or, or their names or whatever. And that song has been sung through all my children growing up. And now I'm singing to my grandbabies. But I know how this song made them feel. And even my son, who is now 15, he remembers how I was singing that song that would always calm him down before he would go to bed. And it's not my composition. It is a song that was like sung for, children in preschools for little dolls. But I made it the way that I would have that connection with the child, because I
So can
really
you
do
sing
believe.
it? I'm sure people are curious. Could you just sing it?
Okay. So I would just use Lexi because it has to be a certain syllable. You cannot just you have to have two syllables to really put that together. Luli, Lexi, Luli, mama cię przytuli, na spacerku byłaś, bardzo się zmęczyłaś. Luli, Lexi, Luli, mama cię przytuli, jutro znów pójdziemy, bawić się będziemy. It has to be what I've learned doing that. It has to be a voice that they really come to it, like can feel it. And that's really what was helpful for me when I was singing those songs for my children and the children with the disability.
Well, and I watched Lexi get this connection with you that was unreal. And in fact, she talked about you forever, like Kasia, Kasia.
So cute.
So there is
Yeah.
a true connection that you got, not only because of your beautiful energy, but also because of your beautiful voice. What other things would you like the listeners to understand?
I know a lot of people say, like, I cannot create anything. Like even that student in my college class, you say, I don't know how you come up with those melodies, and they're just coming from your sleeve. You just take them out and they're coming out. I cannot do it. And I know people say it's like, I cannot do. And I have a different experience that I can say everyone can do it. So my point is, there are 7 letters, musical alphabet that we have in the music, 7 only. And from those 7 little notes, that we have, we can create something. For example, if I have a three notes are already powerful. From those three notes, you can make a chord. From those three notes, you can make intervals and create little patterns. And so knowing the pattern that you can create your own, knowing a rhythm, which you can even use the heartbeat, pa-pum, pa-pum, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can create a little pattern of music using those three notes. Let's say you have three notes and then you're using the same pattern on a maybe higher key on the keyboard. Now, could be, like ABC, it could be maybe CEG, whatever three notes that you use, and then you can use them in a setting of different patterns. You can create those from those three notes. You can add on. You can also use the black keys to make the sharps or flats for the musicians who know what that means. But you can create something that can be built on, and then it's just like a Lego blocks. You create that one, and then you put some other block and another block. So I would encourage you, dear listeners, if you would like, don't be afraid to try with the three notes if you're interested and see what happens. Through the years of teaching, I had students from like 5-year-olds to 60-year-olds. And there's particular man that I was teaching violin. He wanted to play violin. He was a retired lawyer, and now he says, okay, I always wanted to play fiddle, so now I want to learn how to play. We worked, and of course the beginning it's challenging, but we did work. And I even asked him to create something at the end when he already knew how to play enough to understand the concept, to create something simple melody. And he came up with very short little section of music, but it is powerful because you like, wow, I did this, and it is yours. You take this ownership, you create it, and that is so amazing to see. That it doesn't have to be a huge production, but something that you might use your brain and say, hey, I actually can do this. I can write three notes.
Well, I think that's a simple invitation to step into creativity, that where some of us might be, I mean, I play the piano, but I might be a little intimidated to make my own music up. But I love that I could just take the three notes and play with that, and then see what I can do with rhythm too. I love that invitation. And then I would add an invitation that, and it's something that you had said at the very beginning, is you have playlists. I think playlists are powerful because when you have it for different areas of your life, then whenever you need it, it's just like, have them ready for you. Like if you have a thought process that's taking you down, if you have that motivational music, or if you're super sad and can't cry, because we know it's good to get things out, having that. I have even a cry list, something where I can put that in and just allow myself to release. And then of course I use the motivational one to get me back up again, or the just get moving one, or and it's so great that there's so many different genres of music. And right. I have a son that's a self-proclaimed redneck. And that's when I moved into country western, and we had a horse, and so I learned to appreciate different genres of music, and so grateful for it. And different countries' music. How can you not go to Hawaii and get swept away in that music, or the music of India, or the music of Italy? And there's so much for us to appreciate. So when we can expand our exposure to things, it allows our brain capacity to open up to different things too. So exposure is of good music, I will add, good music. We do have to be very careful of lyrics, because sometimes we think, I can't even hear the lyrics, it doesn't matter. But our subconscious is drinking things in at warp speed. And we may think we don't have it in there, but we'd be surprised that all of a sudden those lyrics will come out because we have subconsciously heard it. It's in there. And so we have to be very cognizant of the words that we listen to.
So true, because when I was growing up, you listened to a lot of music from the States, from other countries. And I didn't know English, but I loved the beat. And I was like, oh, this is such a good song. And then when I learned the language, I was like, oh, I like the lyrics. So yes, lyrics are so powerful too. They can, and in these days, I personally love songs with messages, like meaningful. So beat is good, rhythm is fine. That's what we want, have those happy vibes. But if there's only one word that repeats through the song, to me is very boring. But it's not helping me to appreciate that music as much as I would if I would listen to lyrics that has some messages inspiring.
Right. Yeah.
So I love music, lyrics, and the music together that create that amazing message. And of course, I'm talking about songs itself, but there's a lot of classical pieces. There are no music, and that's where I love to use my imagination and see what the imagery is in there.
Well, music creates the brain impressions or the brain memories faster than anything. So it's a powerful tool, and it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. But once we understand the power of music and utilize it in our life, it can be an aid to us. Music has been your life.
Yes.
And you have created with it. You have taught, you're teaching others to be creators. And it's just so exciting to see the movement you have. You have a podcast called Kasia's Faith Journey for those who want to go on and listen to her podcast. She has an episode on music that's absolutely beautiful. Become a follower of Kasia and listen to the journey that she's sharing of her past, but these beautiful experiences that she's had that has shaped her life and the lives of other people.
Thank you for listening to me talking about music, because it is, I do believe music can touch people's life.
Well, what a delight to have you today. And thank you for sharing your journey of music. And thank you for the influence you have on the world with your music. And I know there's many out there that you're music aficionados and understand the power of music. But if we're not utilizing music in our lives, we are leaving something on the table. So we encourage you this week, try to be a creator, 3 different notes, and try to come up with something. And if you don't have a playlist, I would say start today. It's so easy to put it on your phone, and what a powerful tool that is for all of us. And as always, we are creators and we create the life that we want. So let's go out this week and create with music. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you, Kasia.
Thank you.